Alright, so this video is going to be over the recent Moons Out, Goons Out night match that happened at Clinton House in South Carolina. This is not the Moons Out, Goons Out that Forgotten Weapons puts on, just so there's no confusion about that. I'm going to do this video in a little bit different format from my usual videos because it was a pretty short match, pretty quick. So I'm not going to do the split format where I show all the footage, then go over the gear, and then go back through all the footage. I'm just going to kind of combine everything together. So we'll go ahead and go over the gear now and then jump to the match footage. So as you can see, I was running a bit of a funky setup this time around. So both of these guns are new to the channel. I'm rocking a S&W TRR8 for the sidearm, and then the new Springfield Kuna for my primary. So yeah, we'll go ahead and talk about them. So we'll start with the pistol, I guess. So like I said, Smith & Wesson TRR8. This is an 8-shot 357. Unfortunately for the match, I was not actually using 357 Magnum. For the match, I was using some Monarch 38 Special. That was because the match director, so there was steel targets at the match, and the match director, didn't want me beating those up too hard. That can actually be a safety issue, especially if you're shooting too close. So I ran 38, except for the last stage. On the last stage, I did run some 125 grain 357 Magnum, just because, I had to. It's, legally required. Now, as far as the setup for the revolver itself, I'm rocking the TLR1 HL for the light. The grips are some VZ grips, and that's basically it. For loading, I was using moon clips. So these are some TK custom moon clips. These are their, I guess, quote, universal clips that work with pretty much any type of brass. And then holster. So no one makes a holster for this because why would they? Who is out there actually using a revolver with a light on it? So I had to make my own. So this is not, I'm not pretending that this is a great holster. I had to hand make it myself, but it works. It is cut for an optic because I do have an optic that I can put on this. However, when I went to zero it, I found out that I couldn't actually get the gun zeroed at 25 yards. It was still hitting about 6 inches high, and then the sight ran out of elevation adjustment. So I decided to go old school and use irons. But yeah, this was super fun. I'm definitely looking forward to using this more on the channel. As far as carrying moon clips, I just used a dump pouch, just attached that to my belt, and then just have this full of, loose moon clips. This is definitely not the best way to go about it. In the future, I will figure out a better way to do that, but for this match, it worked fine. It was slow. It definitely cost me time and probably a few, places on the scoreboard, but I'm here having fun, so it's not a huge problem for me. Quick note on the holster. So this is set up for the G-Code RTI system. So this goes on my belt. This attaches to this, so I can swap this out for another holster. So now for the Kuna. So I've had this for maybe a month. I've only got a few hundred rounds through it. I don't have a huge amount of experience with it yet. Decided to use it at the night match. So we'll go ahead and talk about the setup. So the can is a Silencer Co. Omega 36M. Now a quick note on the can, you will see it in the match footage. On stage 4, what happens is I'm shooting some long range targets. Well, long range, 100-ish yards. And so I shoot a few, and then my accuracy just falls apart. I can't hit the last target. I have no idea where my bullets are going. The people, behind me are telling me, hey, you're hitting right, you're hitting left, you're hitting low. No idea what was going on. So I assumed option 1, the can had come loose from the Charlie mount here, because that's happened to me before on my Tabuk. That wasn't the case. So then I thought, okay, well, maybe the ASR mount itself backed off. That also wasn't the case. What had happened was the ASR mount unthreaded, and that was my fault. It's not really a fault of the Kuna or anything like that. I didn't get that installed to the right torque, so and I also didn't use rock set or anything like that, so that's on me. That, you know, silly mistake. Just a little Arisaka finger stop there. The light, sorry, the light is the Z-Bolt Blazer LEP. I'm just using a clicky switch because why worry about cables? The sight is the Russian PKAS. It's a very cool Russian optic that I picked up a while ago. I'm using a Magpul sling adapter, so you know this normally has a QD socket. However, you know, if you've seen a lot of my videos, I don't have a QD sling, I just have a sling with HK clips. So I didn't even know that Magpul made this. It just goes into the QD socket, you tighten the screw, and then it locks in place, and then now you have a place to clip a sling. So pretty cool. So that's how I'm gonna run that from now on, I think. The brace. So I did not buy the version of the Kuna with the brace because I already have my own braces. So I figured I'd save myself some money and get the cheaper version. This is the JMac folding AR buffer tube adapter that mounts to Picatinny, and then a SBA3 brace. Those of you with a discerning eye will know that this is not the standard paint job for the Kuna. The Kuna comes black. This is just spray paint. The texture you see on it comes from textured spray paint. You can get that at, I got the textured spray paint that I use specifically on this, I got at Hobby Lobby. I think it came out pretty cool. So I think that's all I've got for the intro. We'll go ahead and get to the match footage. So a quick note on the revolver. People are gonna ask how I'm actuating the light because, you know, can't really reach that with either of your fingers to activate it. So, you know, how am I using that? So the answer is basically, as I draw it out from the holster, as I'm bringing the gun up, my offhand just comes up, bumps the light, and then I present and fire. So that's how I'm using that. That's actually part of why I kept activating the strobe on accident. So what was happening was, as I bring the hand up, I would accidentally tap it down, and then when I go up, it activates the strobe. So that's what was happening. And then the other question is, what, I guess, technique am I using to load the gun? So I just looked up, you know, Jerry Mitchell to see how he does it, right? Because, you know, might as well copy the best. And basically, the way he does it is you hit the cylinder release, pop it out, grab the gun, dump the ammo, and then while you're doing that, with your right hand, you come in and just drop it in. Now, quick note, so this is actually the 357 Magnum, and one thing, if you're paying attention, you'll notice that there's not really a crimp on these rounds. So if I go grab some of the 38 I was using, right, so this is the 38 special I was using as opposed to the 357, and what you see is that the 38 has a really strong crimp on the bullet. And so what that does is, as I'm trying to load it, the crimp basically acts like a funnel and it just drops right in. Whereas the 357, since it has no crimp, the case mounts get kind of caught, and that time it went in nice, but it's pretty easy to get it to where it doesn't really want to go in. Like it's not ideal with the 357. So that cost me some time on stage 5. But yeah, so that's how I'm loading. Basically, pop it out, drop it, and drop it in a moon clip, and then go to town. So that's how I was doing that. Alright, so for stage 1, we had 3 shooting positions for the rifle. The only real interesting part about this stage was that from the second shooting position, we had to stand on this wobble platform. So it's a platform suspended by chains. I didn't think it would be too bad, and then I stepped on it, and it was a lot worse than I thought it was going to be. But overall, not terrible. One of the nice things that I discovered at this match, this is the first time I've run subsonic ammo at one of these matches. One of the cool things about subsonic ammo is you can actually hear the bullet hit the target. So, you know, knowing that I hit the target was pretty easy. As far as revolver stuff went, I thought I did pretty good on the revolver. I didn't miss very often, so I didn't have to reload except for this one time. The reload itself went fairly smoothly. That was my first reload on the clock ever. And yeah. So, stage 2. This was one of the stages with some long range stuff. Luckily my suppressor was still tight at this point in the match. So shooting these long range targets was no problem at all. Well, I say that. I did miss a few times, but that's just me being sloppy. The Kuna handled this just fine. Like I said in the intro, I'm using PMC bronze 147 grain 9mm, and it worked alright. So right here when I unload, it takes me a little bit to actually rack that round out, and that's just because it's kind of hard to get to the charging handle just from how I have the light set up. It's not a huge issue, but it cost me a few seconds there. And then I apologize to everyone watching who might get a seizure right there. And I do this a few more times in the match. When I turn on my light, I accidentally turn it on strobe, and I apologize. It's annoying, but it is what it is. So after that array of targets, we have to run up and engage the last steel target with 1 round. And I thought I was going to get this, and I miss. Alright, so now for stage 3. This was by far my worst stage of the match. The rifle section went fine. I cruised through it with the Kuna. No problems. So the way this stage worked is that there were several ports. So there were 4 ports and then 1 final shooting position. You had to engage 1 target per port, and then the 2 outside targets had to be engaged from the last position. And then you switch to your handgun and, you know, go back through the opposite way. Well, my brain immediately went to USPSA mode, and I just decided to shoot everything I could see from this first position with the revolver. And I caught my mistake, and then it just kind of fell apart. So the second position, I only got 1 shot off, then I had to reload, and then as I'm reloading, I'm thinking about what I did wrong, realize I had to move, engage the next target, almost engage the next target, but catch myself, have to rethink through the stage, and then finish the stage. It was not great, and then of course I had to do a standing reload right at the very end, so yeah, this stage was rough. Alright, so stage 4. This stage was also not very good. However, this is where my suppressor came loose. So at least this time I have a, I guess, somewhat valid excuse as to why it went bad. You know, the previous stage, it was just me being an idiot. This stage, it's, you know, an issue with the equipment. And it's one that you can't really do anything about, because once your can comes loose, your accuracy just is atrocious, and you can't really compensate for that. Now that shot, I hit the post. I think everyone knew I hit the post. RO called it anyway. You know, he threw me a bone, so I appreciate that. Now, at this point,
Hitting real low.
I had to
Real
reload,
low.
and everyone knows something is up with my gun. So I decide to check my silencer to see if it had come loose, and I see, oh, it has. So I tightened it just to see, well, maybe if I tighten it real quick, then, you know, I can finish out the stage. I still couldn't hit that target. So my first thought was, well, let me just take it off. And then I kept unthreading and unthreading and unthreading, and I was like, oh, the can's not loose, the muzzle brake's loose. So at that point, I knew it would just take way too much time to unthread the suppressor and keep going. So I just said, you know what? I'll just skip the last target. I'll take the penalty, finish the stage, and that's what I did. The target array back here was a little bit unfortunate. There was no real good way for me to do any stage planning. No matter what, I was going to have to do a standing reload. And then at this last position, I tried to get those 2 targets from that left side, but it didn't really work. I had to lean out too far, so I had to switch sides. Overall, not great. Alright, and now for stage 5. So this stage you started blindfolded, and then you had to grab everything you needed off the table. So, grab my rifle, load up, get these paper targets. I did miss one, so that middle target, I did miss one shot on that target, so that was my only rifle miss. Well, my second rifle miss of the match. And then the last target there, you had to drop your magazine and fire just 1 round at it. So, move into the house, and then this stage, I was using full power 357. And one of the things about this particular 357 Magnum is, so the SIG 357 Magnum, is that there's not a super hard crimp on the rounds, which makes getting the rounds into the cylinder difficult. So you see me struggling right here with this reload. It's just because the rounds didn't really want to line up very well, and that cost me time. So I should have stuck with the 38. All right, so that's all I've got for the match. Placement wasn't great. You know, going into the match, I was hoping to do better, but I wasn't really expecting much because I'm running a revolver. So, you know, my hopes were not super high. However, despite that, I think, you know, I did place above halfway for white light. So I'm pretty happy with that, especially given, you know, how bad my performance was on stage 3 and 4. But yeah, revolver ran pretty good, as you'd expect from a revolver. The Kuna ran good. No complaints yet about it. I haven't had any break-in issues or anything like that. So far, it's just been, you know, a good gun. Expect to see both of these on the channel as matches come up that I can use them for. These aren't, you know, I do a lot of matches where neither of these are particularly great choices, but hey, you see the name of the channel, so you can expect that I will bust these out. I'm sure you've got questions and comments. Go ahead, leave those below, and I'll see you on the next video.